Hi, I'm Hal Werner, and you're listening to Ideas with Flavor. I'm here today with Preston Miller. He's a very driven digital marketer, and so it came to no surprise to me that he attended something called HustleCon this year. We're going to talk a little bit about HustleCon, but before we do, let's even talk about this concept of hustling. So once upon a time, I think we all know the old concept of hustling, right? It did have a lot to do with being sort of driven and entrepreneurial, but it was typically seen in the vein of, illicit activities or borderline, sort of gray areas. It wasn't a very reputable concept.
What do you think of in that old school? Because I think of New York, trench coat, he's selling you a fake Rolex, right?
Right. I tend to think about people playing dice in a back alley on a 50-gallon drum.
That's right.
But this concept of hustling has really come into at least the marketing lexicon recently. Mm-hmm. And it's taken on a bit of a new meaning, I feel. So tell us a little bit about what you feel like it means now, Preston.
Hustle now, wow. It's a popular culture. It's a thing. I'm sure everybody's heard of Gary Vee talking about hustle. He's been one of probably the big guys that have kind of normalized the whole I'm always hustling 24/7 idea. But in fact, HustleCon, and when I found them and heard about it, they've been doing this for years now. This is not something new, so they've been kind of on it. It's got a bad name, I will say that, because I was talking to people at work about it, and they're like, HustleCon? What is it? Who's getting conned? Kind of a thing. But yeah, it's this idea of I'll do whatever it takes. It doesn't matter how many hours, how much hard work. I'll get my hands dirty. I'll make it happen no matter what the cost. A lot of people think, they're going to outsource everything or have, subject matter experts. And this is no. I'll figure it out. I'll get my hands dirty. If I have to program, if I have to find people, if I have to make 1,000 calls a day, I'll do it, whatever it takes.
So it sounds like there's a bit of a DIY approach to business there, maybe looped in with some of that. Still looped in with some of that entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
But just less illegal.
Right. Nothing illegal. And it's a lot easier with the internet today, right? Everybody's connected. You can find the right people. You can learn almost anything online now. So that really helps.
There's a ton of tools, I guess, that probably help enable this concept to exist, right? So, it's 15 years ago, 10 years ago, you had to have serious programming knowledge to build a website, probably.
That's right.
But today you can sign up for something like Squarespace and just drag and drop a few things in a template, and suddenly you have created a website.
You're online in 5 minutes, yeah.
And then to your point about there's tons of online learning, both simply YouTube and more formal stuff like Emma or things like that.
It's crazy now, yeah.
So who is hustling relevant to? Is this only for entrepreneurs? Does it include people working at, companies, bigger companies or smaller companies? What kind of people showed up to this conference?
That's a great question. I was wondering the same thing before I went because this was my first year to go. It's really a great mix of everybody. You've got entrepreneurs and you've got people at Fortune 500 companies trying to pick up the little nuggets of info of things that they can use. It's all over the place. There's people at startups there trying to network, trying to find investors. I bumped into a few investors that they didn't know what they were going to do, so they were trying to figure out what's the latest things, how are people doing this, what are some of the good business models, what's worked, how do I invest in some of these new companies. Ran into some guys from Microsoft, it's the Bay Area, so there was a lot of those companies there. And then just other people trying to get stuff off the ground, trying to get me to invest or get involved, getting me to sign up, just all over the place.
So how do you think some of that hustling mentality applies to folks in the larger companies? I mean, is this a situation of maybe you're in charge of a little division, or is it just big companies acting in a different way?
I think the angle for the big companies is more kind of figuring out what works from some of these smaller guys if they're creating totally new business segments, or if they can leverage their base and take them to whatever this new thing is, whether it's revenue or if they're in their own business pod inside of some huge company, just picking that up and telling their superiors, hey, this is what's working, we need to be doing this and here's why.
Yeah. So, because I guess a lot of the hustling involves entrepreneurs, if you're trying to take a big company and be more innovative, that's kind of some takeaway that they could get out of it potentially.
Oh yeah, totally.
Good deal. Well, what are some of the key lessons that you took away from the conference?
Well, so I didn't know exactly what to expect on this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know if it was going to be quote unquote legit, or if it was like going to kind of just be people talking about different things and not really revealing the secrets, as I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But a few of the things I'll just tell you here. A few of the things I learned were, I'd always wondered how people get these off the ground and how they get funding and get going. And it turns out it's a lot more simple than, people seem to think, right? It's this mythical land and you pray to these wizards, right? And they just grant you $10 million when you're off the ground.
You do the investor rain dance and they fall from the sky.
That's right. It was a little bizarre. Some of the stories, one of the guys from Quest Nutrition said that they were like renting a kitchen by the hour and making the bars. And so I didn't realize, I thought, you just get the funding and then you're in the nice office space. And no, so you actually have to build it up. So I learned how to actually get going based on what these, different entrepreneurs and hustlers had actually done. I also learned, there's problems once you make it. Once you take over different markets, there's problems of growth. There's problems of like product diversification. So even like Casey Neistat said, once he sold his documentary series for a couple million, he didn't do anything for a while and just sat on the money. And that was one of the worst periods of his life. So, I mean, good problems to have. Poshmark was also a really interesting talk. They were talking about how to provide value for your users and how they go out and fight for the users and really simplify it. And then, of course, a lot of focus on the customer experience, making it as easy as possible for them. And in the backgrounds, they were fighting the Postal Service. They were fighting everybody, trying to make it as easy as possible. So lots of different things there. Some really good key takeaways. But from the marketing perspective, there was one really good one from a suitcase company of how they've leveraged Instagram and social, and with different hashtags and different influencers, been able to really scale. I've heard a lot about that lately, and that was really surprising at how quickly they were able to grow. And then some other studies they did, watching people pack suitcases, some very bizarre consumer research, but hey, it showed them some things that they could have never figured out otherwise. So
yeah, well, I mean, that's cool. It sounds like if you're one of these little guys trying to make it, you have to be really unconventional to compete. And so, it may seem weird, but, some funny methods of customer research, if they can get you an insight that nobody else has or nobody else is acting on, that definitely is an advantage. And then, of course, doing scrappy, uncouth things with different kinds of marketing and, maybe channels where people aren't focusing as much or don't know how to be as effective.
I think startups have it right. I mean, they have to do whatever it takes to make it. I think a lot of times, big companies, you can kind of sit on your wins. You got your cash cows. You're like, we're good. We don't really need to do certain things. But these guys know they're fighting to survive and take market share. So,
well, and they're not able to come into it with preconceived notions, right? A lot of companies, once you reach a certain size, you go, oh, this tactic we're going to use, regardless of, any analysis of it.
That's right.
Versus if you're really running on a shoestring, you're only going to pick the one or two tactics that you believe are going to work and work really well for you.
Yeah.
So there's not like a table stakes. We're definitely doing all these things.
Yeah.
So I mean, I imagine that makes it pretty creative.
Yeah.
Are there any lessons that you've been able to implement here that you've learned from there so far?
Oh my gosh!
I know it hasn't been super long, but
yeah, it hasn't been too long. I think a lot of it so far has been more of a mindset of different things that happen, trying to think through them from this perspective, like how is this going to impact the company? What are we actually doing that's going to drive our different KPIs and things that we're focusing on?
Mm-hmm.
So,
gotcha.
There's been no new products, nothing crazy, but
Yeah, I mean, you're in your job and my job. Our job isn't to launch new products, right? So that's not what we'd be doing anyway. But it sounds like there's a little bit of even just the mentality of thinking like a lean kind of startup that makes you take a more critical eye to things.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more of that 80-20 exercise.
That's right.
If we don't do this, we'll lose a few customers. Yeah, but you'll get that many more by focusing on something more impactful, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Did you meet any interesting people there in Oakland at HustleCon?
It
wasn't Oakland. I mean, that feels like the place to have HustleCon, either version of hustling.
Yeah, a bit of a sketchy area to say the least. I did meet some interesting characters. One guy was like running a social media agency for clients that he couldn't disclose, but rock stars, musicians, celebrities. Had some interesting conversations with that guy. Just people doing all different kinds of side hustles, who quit their jobs. It was like, which business card do I give you? kind of a thing. What do you do? And then I'll tell you which one of the things that I'm doing is relevant. So just so many interesting characters, some investors who are looking to invest, or what are you doing? Can I bet? What are you trying to do? Let's talk. Lots of interesting corporate people as well who are just looking for the next thing. So definitely some good conversations. I learned a lot. I would recommend it.
Did anyone have any crazy stories, away from the sessions?
So there wasn't too much time in between the sessions. There was obviously like lunch, and then there was the after party and a few other things. I didn't hear anything too crazy that was work related. Nothing that's really repeatable on the podcast here. But definitely some good people, some good tactics, some cool swag too. Give them that, and they had way too much alcohol. I don't know what happened, but they had probably like a couple hundred bottles of beer and wine that they weren't gonna even use.
Wow!
Like, please drink it. I'm like,
is that the hustle fuel?
It was That's it.
So you mentioned one thing that I kind of forgotten about, but that's also kind of a sub theme of the hustle lately, and that's the side hustle.
Yes.
So a lot of these people, especially in the entrepreneurial community, they don't just start out with that funding or the ability to just go straight and do one thing. So a lot of folks, have to work a day job while trying to start, this side hustle, this side business until it becomes viable.
Right.
Was there any talk about that during the conference?
Not in the conference directly. I know. So Casey kind of touched on that, where he was working somewhere as like a janitor trying to create movies, and he was using the facility because it was in New York to shoot the videos, and he got caught by his boss. Like, what are you filming? But nobody really got into side hustling.
No, be careful when you're side hustling about double dipping.
Well, right. So that was a key lesson on that one. They did have a Q&A with the founder of Greatest. Like the blog media site, and somebody asked him, how do you know when it's time to quit your job and pursue this other thing? And he said, well, if you're even asking that, then it's not you. Because he said he was working at a job, and he said, I just thought I could do everything better, so I just quit and did do it better, and now I'm here and doing my thing. So I thought that was interesting. But I mean, there has to be a point where, in my opinion, I'll just say, I mean, I've seen a few other people. You have to get it started, because quitting your job, that's a lot. I mean, if you're married, you have kids, you have a mortgage. It's not that simple. For sure.
Well, it sounds like potentially a subject for a little bit of extra attention next year, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll make sure and let them know.
Cool.
Is there any advice you would give to people coming off of this conference? Anything to let people know, hey, really think about doing this or doing things this way?
Wow, that's a tall order. I think it would just come back to, if you're working somewhere and you're doing a lot of different things, really ask yourself, like, why am I doing this, and how is this helping the business? Or even if it's something that you're not currently doing, what could I do that could actually help or impact the business? and give us light into something maybe we're not looking at. And then as well, looking at things in a different light. A lot of times we just get stuck in routines. We get stuck doing things because that's the way they've been done for so long. And you really have to step back, look at it, understand why you're doing what you're doing, and then I think great things can happen if you start looking at it like that.
So question the assumptions.
Question the assumptions. Well put, sir.
I like it. Good deal. All right, Preston. This has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find you online?
People can find me online at prestondmiller.com. That's I'm a digital marketing guy, so hey, reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you. I'm also on Twitter at Preston D. Miller, so love to hear from you guys.
Yep. Once again, I'm Hal Werner, Ideas with Flavor. You can find me online at halwerner.com and as well on Twitter, LinkedIn, and any number of other things where I've got that same handle. So thanks again for coming, Preston.
Thanks, Hal.
This has been Ideas with Flavor. Catch you next time.